Okay. Good morning, everyone. It's nice to see some friendly names and faces there and the sidebar. This session, we're going to focus on advocacy for children and families and how it really starts with you. So, some big and small ways that you can make the change that you want to see, either personally or professionally, kind of in our community. Just so you know, those of you that I don't know, I am pretty casual. I actually prefer these things when they're more talk story and we are all together in person. So I would really welcome and encourage you as we go along. If you have questions, either use the raise hand function and we can stop at any time and kind of dig into things, or also the chat, like put things in the chat. We can take this conversation. I'd like it to be a conversation in any directions that are really useful to you. So I am with Hawaii Children's Action Network. We are a statewide nonprofit. We are housed on Oahu, but we do work statewide. And I do see in this space Mele Andrade from my team, who lives and works on Maui. So a few folks are on Maui. Mele is there. And then a little bit about me personally. So I'm in Honolulu. I'm actually speaking to you right now from my home office at the back of the beautiful Manoa Valley. I was born and raised in Buffalo, New York, but I have lived in Hawaii almost 20 years. It'll be 20 years in a couple of months. I have two children myself, so I often approach this work. It's very personal for me, as well as kind of the work we do. I have a 12, almost 13-year-old. So if anyone wants to commiserate around middle school, please let me know. And then I have a 12-year-old son and a 9-year-old daughter. They are both in fabulous local public schools here, so we can talk about that as well. So for me, this work is like a blend of personal and professional. I really very much approached it with, I think, everyone in this kind of sector and work, where I love it because everyone is so passionate. So that's just a little bit about me. So for those of you who might be newer to, why are my slides not moving? HCAN. Oh, there we go. We talk about our work that we're really growing a movement to change policies, to change systems, to make this state, that our local communities, the best place possible for our children and families. So we are made up of all these kind of collectives. It's just not just like our staff. What we're really trying to do is engage organizations. I know many of you are here representing organizations, and families, like family voice, to come together to make change, the change that we all see in our work, in our families, that we think is what our families and our children deserve to have, right? And that's what it takes. This kind of work, I think, takes that a movement building. Okay, so we are going to get into a little bit of like advocacy, which I know for some folks is a very scary word. Folks are like, I don't do that. I just wanted to define it a little bit first. Karen, I see, is laughing because she knows. Karen is laughing, right? People think it's scary. And I think that's a piece of what I hope to do today is like demystify it. It's not scary. It's probably something you're already actually doing and might just not call it that. So advocacy, this is like the definition, is there's calling out for support, or maybe more technically, like a way to put problems on the agenda, provide solutions, and build support around the problem and solutions. That's probably something that each and every one of you does in your family, in your programs, in your organization. Sometimes when we're talking about advocacy, it could be at those organizational levels. Sometimes it is the same kind of work we might do, but maybe at more of a community level. Okay, so what we're not going to talk about here today, it's not a direct service, right? Advocacy is not, it's not usually, or the advocacy we're going to talk about today is not advocating on behalf of a single child, right? That does happen in some spaces, like guardian ad litem, right? You're going to advocate for one child in the court. We're going to talk a little bit more today about like systems level advocacy. And then some folks get a little scared and say, oh, but it's lobbying, and either I can't do that or I don't want to do that. And I'm going to tell you that sometimes advocacy is lobbying and frequently it's not. So we'll talk a little bit about like the differences. Okay, so like pop quiz, I would like you all to come off. Hang on, can I do this? Let's see if I can do this. Okay. Why do we want to advocate? You can put in the chat. Why would we advocate for something? Or you can speak if you want, or you can just put in the chat. Why might you advocate? Change systems, make change. Anything else? I spoke to someone yesterday who said she advocates because she feels she has no other choice. That like if she sees something that's wrong, she has to speak up, which I thought was a really like kind of beautiful and powerful way of talking about it. So right, let people know that something is broken, wrong, that something is not the way it should, you know, not pono, not the way it should be. Those kinds of things often is why we're doing that. So literally it is just you see something from wherever you sit that needs to be changed. Okay, show of hands. I want like a thumbs up or a hand raise. How many of you have something in your mind where you're like, I can think of something that needs to be changed in our community to make things better for families? Okay. Anybody willing to put those things in the chat? What are some things that you happen to see? Or speak. What's like one thing that you're like, why is it like this? If this was fixed, that would make more sense. The world would be a better place. Name something that is broken right now. Could be something just on Maui. Not everyone's from Maui, right? I see a lot of Maui folks, but like something in your neighborhood, something in your, let's see, can I see the chat? Hang on. I think I have to, there, I have to take, I can't show my slides and see the chat at the same time. Okay. Healthcare access, paid family leave, more affordable rental housing, and early childcare. Public preschools in all caps. Nikki feels strongly about that one. I love it. Living wage, healthcare access, behavioral health, the way our county council distributes funding. Oh, and wastes it. Ooh. Drug problems, drug treatment. Something else that seems broken. Anything else? A new high school on Maui debacle. It can't open because of the way the road was built. Oh my gosh, I've seen that in the paper even over here. And like, are you kidding me? Okay, yeah, something that's broken. Okay, some of those things you all are putting in are huge. Are there any like smaller things that you see? Anybody have like a little thing? Even if you think it's too silly, put it in. Like, I want everyone to put at least one thing in. Some of you put multiple, so you know you're my overachievers, which is okay. Could be small things that you're like, why is it like this? I think that's how kind of advocacy often starts, is just questioning, why is it like this? It doesn't seem right. How long it takes to get a building permit on Maui. Yes, we have that problem on Oahu too, and apparently lots of people taking bribes. Yeah, it takes a real lot. Why is that, right? Okay, so this is the kind of frame I want you all to be thinking about. A lot of work in advocacy is a little bit like detectiving. We just put on our hat sometimes about like, this makes no sense to me as just a regular thinking person. Why is it like this? That's kind of the frame of mind. If you're gonna be good at advocacy, that is the place to start. Let me bring back up my slides again. This is like a little dance. Okay, you see something that needs to be changed. That is your beginning point. Okay. How many of you, show of hands, think that this is all lobbying and maybe you can't do it? Anybody? Karen, so I can see Karen because she's on video shaking her head. Okay, I'm going to tell you it's not. Okay, so advocacy, this sort of basic piece is like raising your voice. Arguing in favor of some things like an idea, a policy, sometimes raising issues that you see. I should also note, we'll talk a little bit today. There are different things depending on if you are wearing your hat as I'm here representing a nonprofit, right? I'm showing up in a space today as Candace Johns with the Maui Farm. I'm picking on Candace because I can see her there. I'm Nikki Taylor with the Mua Family Services. So if you're wearing a nonprofit like hat, there's kind of one set of rules. If you're just coming in and want to advocate more as just a human being, a parent, a person, a citizen, a voter, you have a lot more like leeway, right? You have all kinds of stuff that you can do if you're doing advocacy. There's like really no limits. Okay, so even in a nonprofit hat, if you're showing up with your, hi, I'm here representing a nonprofit, I'm here during my work day, there is no limit to the amount of advocacy that a nonprofit can do. That is a frequent misconception that I hear from folks, is we can't do advocacy. Those of you that were just in Nick's session, he talked a lot about advocacy as well that you can do. Advocacy in this space is often educating policymakers, educating your community through, get into some details about the issues that you see, right? Just basically, here is a problem, here might be some solutions, here's data, here's the info, here's what I see with our direct service program, working with families, storytelling sometimes. Lobbying, and this is what is important. Lobbying is when you get to talking about a specific piece of legislation, is the simplest way to talk about it. So it's when you take that work to the level of, hello, Maui County Council, I would like you to pass Bill 123 this year that, I don't know, gives a ton more money for home visiting services on Maui. And I'm here to tell you, you should vote yes on that bill because of why. So that is when it gets into lobbying. Nonprofits can do lobbying work, and we are really trying to encourage as many nonprofits to do it. But there are some like guardrails around that. The basic guardrail, though, for folks to know in general, and I'm happy to work with you on how to do that legally. Folks like Hano can do that if your nonprofit is interested in lobbying but does not do that work now. The basic kind of guideline, though, is that nonprofits are able to lobby up to about 20 or 25% of their overall budget. For many of us nonprofits, that's a really big amount, right? If you're a social service agency and you start thinking about, that's your total budget. So if you have $1 million budget, you can spend $200,000, $250,000 a year on lobbying. My guess is no one would come even close. Like even an org like mine that does a lot of lobbying, it's still a really minor part of our overall budget, right? There are two kinds of lobbying. It's important. And I should also say nonprofits have to track some of their lobbying and register with the state or the county to like let people know that you're doing the lobbying work. But it's not that hard. It's like another piece of paperwork, and nonprofits do paperwork all day long. So it's not any different than the rest of what we do to operate, frankly. There's two kinds of lobbying when we think about it. There is grassroots lobbying, which is when you go out and get people in the community to kind of vote with you, right? You go out and you're getting all your friends, all your nonprofit partners, everybody should call 12 people and ask them to vote yes on Bill 123, right? And then direct lobbying is if you go in directly and like testify, have a meeting where you're doing that direct ask. You're going in and meeting with the mayor and saying, Mayor, we want you to sign Bill 123. This is why it's really important. We want you to vote yes on it. So you have a specific position on a specific piece of legislation. That's when it becomes lobbying, but it is completely legal for nonprofits to do. I would encourage you to do it. I put this next slide in. We're not going to go into depth, but this is like when you're required to register with our state, which is for transparency. But the piece I want to note at the bottom, and again, I can help you with this, and the State Ethics Commission can help you with this. But if you don't get paid to do any lobbying, you don't need to register. You can do unlimited lobbying as an individual. So like it's, again, if it's part of your job, that means you're getting paid. I am a registered lobbyist. Part of my job at HCAN is to do lobbying work, like it's a percentage of my salary. So I am a registered lobbyist, as are some folks on my team. However, if I was just doing it, or when my board members do it, because I don't pay my board members, they don't have to register as lobbyists. They're just doing it free as volunteers, right? So if you're not getting paid, if this is something you're doing on your Saturdays after work, you can lobby as much as you want, right? That's, I think, the important piece here. Okay. And before we move on, any questions? I can't see everyone. Any questions about, can we do this? Where you're worried about it, Karen?
So I don't know if this still happens, but it seemed like a couple years ago, and I never found out if it was legal, that some of the big state contracts, when a state would contract with a nonprofit, and there's one state agency that would put this in, they would put in what sounded like prohibitions on lobbying and or advocacy with any money, even if it wasn't theirs. Does that still happen, and is it legal?
I would think, I'm not an attorney, so disclaimer to Karen, who is an attorney. I have not seen that kind of language. It would not, I think it actually is a violation of your First Amendment rights to put that in, and the nonprofits like autonomy. What I do see, and what you cannot do, where the prohibition is you couldn't use that grant money to lobby. So you can't use government money to do that lobbying work. You would need to use philanthropic money if it's allowed in that grant. So same thing happens with philanthropic grants. Sometimes that particular grant might say, you may not use this grant for lobbying. More and more funders are actually not putting that in and just saying, this is general money, you may use it how you want, which is lovely. But in general, you should not be billing, and nonprofits, right, we do all kinds of time allocation to grants, but you should never be billing staff time for lobbying at any level to those government grants, right? Because that would be, you got to use your fundraiser money, your nonprofit, philanthropic grants, those kinds of things. I have not seen that blanket piece. That would be a fun lawsuit if they were, I think. Has anyone else seen that blanket? You can't, by taking this money, you agree not to do any lobbying on any issue with anything?
Thanks. Maybe it was just a holdover from the way things had been done.
Yeah.
And people were so concerned about it that they just continued to believe that they could not be involved in advocacy or in lobbying.
Yeah. Okay. And I just, for example, I just did a certification for a state grant and aid. Again, so state money. And I had to do a certification that we would not use any of the grant and aid money. So it's a specific piece of money, that specific GIA, for entertainment or lobbying purposes. So I can't, we can't, right. But only that GIA is what it wasn't like, I just did that like last week. Does that make any other questions on what can we, can't we do? Good question. Okay, we will move on. Keep the questions coming. Okay. Many of us probably do program planning as part of our work, right? That's a lot of what we in the nonprofit sector do. In many ways, advocacy is very similar. It's largely about just making a plan. So we're going to do a little bit of detail on like maybe how you might do that. First is, we did this already, like the most important part I often think in this work is figure out what's the problem you're trying to solve. And sometimes more importantly, what's the solution that you want or the change you want to make? We get caught up in that a lot in this community, I would say. We're like, oh, I see a problem, but like, and we expect lawmakers sometimes to have all of the solutions, and lawmakers don't. They look to us. Do you have a proposal? Like, how would it work? How could it work better, right? We need to do a better job, I think, in health and human services, coming in with potential solutions for them. So that's the first part. That is, none of that is lobbying. Like that is all going to be work like in your community, in your organization, trying to figure out like, what would you like to change? Lots of conversations. After you know what you want to change, the next, I think, most important piece is figuring out, this is target, which I feel is a really aggressive word, but like, who can make that change? That's also some detective work, right? This is the sleuthing detective part of this. Who can make it? I talk to advocates all the time and they're like, I'm going to call Maisie Hirono because about this thing. And I'm like, no, that's really not in Maisie's jurisdiction. It's nothing Congress will do. That's really something that's Maui County's like responsibility. You need to call your county council person, not Maisie. I mean, you could call Maisie, but most likely Maisie's going to say, don't call me. You're calling the wrong person. Like, I don't have authority to do that. So figuring out, like, is this a state thing? Is this a is it Department of Health? They just get to make the decision on it. Is it the boss at your organization? Is it the principal? Like figuring out who can make that change. And sometimes that is really obvious, and sometimes that's really difficult to do. And I will say my staff is happy to help you try to figure that out if you need help being like, who has authority to do this thing, right? Then that's your target. Then it's thinking about like, who else can work with you on this? Most of the time, policy and systems change. I don't understand what that. Yeah, so rarely is this work done by a single person. Usually the way this work is done is is coalition building, having other people who think about it the same way, who are all where they care about it, right? So you want to think, who are your allies in this? Who else can work with you to get this change made? And then who influences, again, I have the word target. I need a better word here, but like, who do they listen to, right? Who are their respected advisors, colleagues? Do you know those people where you could be like, hey, I know you're really tight with the mayor. Can you get his ear on this thing, right? So kind of who influences them? Who did they listen to that would make that body care? And then honestly, a lot of this is just people get really nervous about, well, what will I possibly say? Will I make a mistake? For most of us, I think the most important thing to do is share your own personal story. Again, going back to like, what's the problem that you saw? Why was this thing a problem for your child or a child in the community or your family or a family you know? People sometimes feel like they have to know all the research, all the data, all the facts. And I'm going to tell you, in general, policy is not made on facts and logic. It's good to have that. We can help. Folks like Karen can help. Karen loves data and logic too. But more often, it's actually just telling a story, and no one can dispute your story, right? People can dispute like, well, what about this data? They can play devil's advocate with data. Your own personal experience, no one can dispute, right? That it's just, here is how I experienced this, whatever it looks like. This is why I see it as a problem. Let me tell you a story about 3 of my clients, right? If they're too nervous about it, and then it helps to illustrate the problem. And also, you can't question it. That is a true thing that happened, right? Like, it's just about what happened and why it was not working for that person. So that's all you have to know. You don't have to know every fact, every figure, every piece of research. You just have to know sort of your own truth and what you're seeing with your own eyes. Okay, plan tactics. We're not going to get too in depth with this. Happy to help if this is something you're interested. These are other things that people sometimes do to impact change, right? Social media, rallies, media interview, write an op-ed or a letter to the editor, make calls. I'm going to tell you, calls and visits, I think, are some of the best thing, and often which we do the least of, because people are like nervous about picking up the phone or asking for a meeting. They're not scary people. They're regular people. I think Nick from the last session just said, especially here in Hawaii, I'm always shocked like how approachable people are, right? They're our friends and neighbors. If you call up a lawmaker pretty much at any level in this state and say, can I have a 15-minute meeting with you? You will get it, right? And you could just be like, I'm in your district. Can I just talk story about a couple of things that I've seen going on? That's all it takes. Okay, show of hands. How many of you have ever submitted testimony for a county issue, a state issue? Only one? Oh, Candace, okay. Lots of people with their cameras off. I can't see them. Okay. Oh, Melly, raise your hand. Oh, good, Melly. That's going. Okay. Testimony also can be super, super easy. This is where often you might throw in a fact or two, or again, just tell your story in writing. You don't have to be the expert. If you are the expert in the field, then, bring it, be like, I am the state's leading expert on this topic, and put your credentials out there, right? But if you're not, you don't need to be, is what I'm saying, right? You don't have to be that expert. If you are, please bring your expertise, but otherwise you can just bring your story, your expertise. And I always say, like, concise is best, right? Like just, please support this bill and I care about this because of these 3 reasons, right? That's perfect. At the state level, we might still be the only state that has a public access room that is funded with our taxpayer dollars. I just put their info up here. Sometimes folks find the state process really confusing. We have a public access room. There's whole purpose. There's usually like 3 people that work there. Their whole purpose in life is their whole jobs are to make sure that like regular citizens can participate. So they are there just to help. They're really lovely people. You can email if you're at the state capitol, you can drop in. Okay. And I'm going to shift gears a little bit and get a little bit more into some things that are going on more topically. But any questions about more like the process? Okay, we'll move on. There's lots going on. A few things just for food for thought that I put up based on who I thought was coming to this conference. In child abuse and neglect prevention, so Holy Kaika's focus, there are a lot of conversations starting to happen about how do we get more money for programs to increase protective factors and what that might look like. I think we're looking for input from folks like you. What do we need? And again, this is that what do we need? What do we need more? What kinds of programs do we need to have more money? If we don't ask, no one knows. Same for things around professional development. And I say professional development, I mean, not just training, but also workforce. Like how do we do things like lift wages? I think across the board, we are seeing people leaving the sector, right? So maybe I should say workforce development, not just professional development. And then also funding, how do we create and fund really strong networks like Holy Kaika, right? Holy Kaika has a super tiny budget. We need more. How do we do that work? And then I also put in, there's quite a bit of conversations around early care and education. Same, how do we get more money out to families? And then the same thing around workforce. How do we get more money out for, here I put workforce development, right? That how do we get more money out for people in the early learning space, so that we don't lose people who work in health, human services, childcare for jobs at Target or the bank or all kinds of things, right? That keep the people passionate in the work. I will also note, I didn't put a slide in here, but there's also some conversations around economic supports for families, more things that could be done, as well as things like paid family leave. So, okay, so a few ways you can get involved. Our organization convenes a children's policy agenda each year, and we work closely with the keiki caucus at the state legislature. It is having its first meeting in a couple of weeks on Zoom. It's gonna be fully virtual. I think it's noon to 1. This is a great place if you have some ideas. This is usually we end up with like say 20 policy ideas. They all come from folks like you, usually folks in nonprofits, parents, sometimes people that just have great ideas. You do not have to have every single thing figured out. You can just come into this space on October 12th saying, I have this idea. Could we start to work on it? That is fine as well. If you don't get these emails already, I put Nicole on our team leads that, and her email is there at the bottom, or you could message me as well. So you can see some of the past. We've been doing a children's policy agenda now, I don't know, maybe 6 or 7 years, trying to just get more of us to work collectively together on some issues. So welcome you to come into this space with ideas, or to just come and listen to other people's ideas and see how maybe you could lend your personal support, your organization's support to getting that thing accomplished, because that's what it takes. Okay. Another place that you could get involved is we have a bunch of really active coalitions that are working on these policy things. Again, this work does not happen like, oh, Deb has a really genius idea, and I mean, I wish. 3 that I put up that you might wish to get involved in. So the Hawaii Early Childhood Advocacy Alliance is a group statewide. It definitely has a few Maui people, but we'd love some more that work specifically on childcare and pre-K access. So they're working right now. They're starting to plan what bills do they want to push for collectively this year. If you, again, don't have time to attend any of these meetings, you can also just join the group and get information. Like they'll be like, there's a hearing coming up. Now's the time you can testify. So there's people that are super involved and there's people that are like kind of more like tangentially involved, because in this work, any little bit helps, right? Like we just need as many people as possible who are just, oh, I have time every once in a while. I'm willing to write one email once a month. I'm willing to make one phone call once in the session. That's fine, right? If we have more people willing to do little things, that's kind of how it adds up. So, okay, so the first coalition and the, I should maybe put it together, but you'll see on the left side, you can sign up for that list at hawaiiearlychildhood.org. The second one is the Hawaii Children's Trust Fund Coalition. So Ho'i Kaika kind of sits as part of that trust fund. So the Hawaii Children's Trust Fund is working on child abuse and neglect prevention, family strengthening. A few people on this call are working with that group right now to figure out maybe some policy priorities. So again, if you have ideas, bring them. That's where they come from. And the last one is the Hawaii Working Families Coalition. And this group has worked on more like economic supports. So it's got nonprofits and unions. So this is the group that last year kind of collectively worked on getting the earned income tax credit, getting lifting the wage. We wish it was still higher, but lifting the wage. This group is the group that is talking right now about some work in the next few years on paid family leave and paid sick days, and maybe some more economic supports for families. They're kind of having, they're just starting those conversations. Like, what do we want to push for? Is it like universal basic income? Is it a child tax credit? Like what are people jazzed about and want to work on? So depending on what your area of interest is, those are three. And if you are interested in other things, please let me know, because there are definitely like other spaces. Like there's some spaces working on housing. I'm happy to connect you to. There's some spaces working on hunger issues. Happy to connect you to that. I just picked these three because I thought they might be the most interest to the folks here today. But let us know. There's probably people working on it, and always they welcome people into this space, because more voices, more organizations is more like collective power, right? So that's where we need help. Okay, a more maybe minor way, if you don't want to join one of the coalitions, we do send out action alerts and updates. Usually not on every single bill to this list, but like a few, like because there is often so many things impacting children and families. This we try to like be more selective. These email updates are often like, please encourage as well. This is where we encourage like the regular moms, dad, aunties, uncles that are not going to like, I don't know, like that have more minimal time sometimes, right? But they want to be involved. They want to hear what's going on. They're willing to sometimes make that phone call. So please sign up, encourage other people to sign up, and then we notify people like, please text Senator, whatever. And when we do that work, just so you know, that is grassroots lobbying we talked about earlier, right? Because if we're asking you, we'll send out an email. And I usually encourage you, if you are not allowed to lobby at your job just because of your hat, or you're a government worker, right? If you're a government worker, sign up for our action alerts with your personal email, right? Because as your own citizen, you can totally do it from your Gmail account, right? If you don't have permission from your own organization to do the lobbying work from your work email, your work phone, your work time, either seek that permission, right? Get that permission that you can do it. And I'm going to be the representative from IMUA. I'm going to be the representative, I'm going to do the testimony for our organization. That's great if you're allowed, but make sure you get the proper, I don't want to get anybody in trouble or fired at your job. Make sure if you're going to do this work in your job that you have permission. And same if you're a state worker, if you're a nonprofit worker, if you're a county worker, and if not, sign up with your personal email, and so it's got like your cell phone, and put your home address also. Your home address really helps us because we do a lot of targeted pieces to specific lawmakers. So for example, we might only email people if we know that Senator Keith Gil Augeron is really important on a measure. We might only email people that we can see from our addresses that live in his district. And then we would be like, hey, you live in his district. It's really important that he hears from people in his district today. So I recommend please put in your mail, your mailing address, if that makes sense, and encourage others to do so as well. It helps us be more specific to know. Often lawmakers want to hear from voters. If you haven't registered to vote, I should start with that. People, if you have not registered to vote, it's not too late for the general. We also have same day, get people. We have such low voter turnout. Voting is critical. Register to vote. And often lawmakers don't care what I have to say, right? Going into all those facts and figures. They want to hear from voters in their community, people who vote them in. So that's one of the most important pieces. If you're helping us sort of build out this movement that we're building, make sure people are putting their home address, because then we can see how many people do we have in this Senate district, House district. That's how you get power, right? Is voters from that area. I mean, sometimes they'll listen to me, but again, I'm in Honolulu. What does a Maui legislator care about? I don't vote for them, right? I'm never going to vote for them unless I move, because Maui is lovely. So maybe I'll move to Maui. But right, the most power I have is with my own state senator and my own state rep, if I'm talking about this state lawmaker. And I talk to them frequently, right? And I remind them when I'm going in, I'm not here as HCAN today. Today I'm here. I'm a voter in your district. Remember, you came to my house and knocked on my door and asked for my vote? Remember that, right? I tell them that, right? So being a voter is really powerful. They work for you. Okay, so don't want to get me in trouble with your job. We have lots of tools and trainings at HCAN. This is a training. We'll be doing some other trainings, I think, later this year with partners. On our HCAN Speaks, which is more of our policy side website, we have this whole advocacy toolkit, which a little bit has more in-depth pieces that we've just talked about today. But if you want tips on how to write testimony, there's a little sample there. If you've never done it and it's scary, you can just go here. How to talk to your lawmaker, how to write a letter to the editor, give some samples and things, right? And we're happy to go through that kind of with you as well. But lots of tools where you don't have to you can just, it's not cheating. I'll say it's cheating, but you can just look there, and then you just, instead of, you fill in your name, you fill in the blanks. And then I do want to do a little pitch. I think Mele is still on this call. We also have the Parent Leadership Training Institute, which is for folks who work in health and human services and childcare, and also for families, everyday regular people. It is an amazing initiative that works to transform parents who care into parents who can lead. So it is much more in-depth. Mele, who's on here, runs it. We have awesome facilitators. We do a virtual option now, as well as there's going to be, we're planning a Maui in person starting in the new year in January. Do I have info this? It is all kinds of more in-depth to give you the skills if you want to get involved in this, but don't know how, and also really building community. I'll give you who the people are. We now have 101 alums, and a lot of them are I think it's just building this community as well, that none of us are doing this work alone, that we are building community, building this network. So I just wanted to highlight Nikki. For those of you who haven't met Nikki, she went through the training program a couple of years ago, and then she founded the Ma'i movement. And this last year, she led the work with many others to pass a bill to provide free menstrual products in all of our public schools. Right. So I think she just spoke actually at one of our orientations for our new group as well. But you can be like Nikki. Nikki's a regular person and a mom, and building something amazing, right? And I think she would tell you it was scary at first, and then she was like, I can do this. So that is it. I'm going to stop my sharing. Who has questions? I talk a lot and fast. Questions or things you want to work on. I mean, I think this is also place to build build community. Oh, and Melanie is saying the Maui cohort is starting in January. And she put the link so that you can apply. Yes, and vote. I did not, oh good, Danielle wants to join. Great, join our cohort. I will just note on our HCAN Speaks side of our house. So my organization also has a special kind of nonprofit that can do work on elections and more political work. There's not too many of them in Hawaii, but if you're interested in getting involved, that is HCAN Speaks. I think we put the website there. That side of our organization is trying to do more work to get folks elected into office. So most nonprofits, C3 nonprofits, can't do that kind of work. But again, if you want to join on your personal time, a big piece of what we think we want to do is sometimes we propose bills and they don't go anywhere. And so how do we get more folks in office that are real champions of child and family issues and that are going to stick their neck out? And sometimes it is going against what businesses want or other special interests. Let's put it that way. There's some really big lobbies out there. There's some big lobbies out there that don't necessarily come in and advocate for what children and families want. They come in and advocate on what does the construction industry need, right? It's a big lobby in this state. Chamber of Commerce is a big lobbying body. I think we're saying we need a bigger lobbying body on behalf of families with some more power. Question. So yeah, welcome you to get involved in our elections part of our work as well. That would probably not be in your nonprofit day job. Oh, thanks, Karen. Yeah, putting up our advocacy toolkit. It's got lots of good stuff in there. Questions, concerns, things that you want to work on it from wherever you sit, or you're going to wait and bring them all to our children's policy. You're just saving it up for October 12 because you have this juicy idea and you don't want to tell me in advance. You're going to wait till October 12 and then you're going to sneak in and be like, bam, I have this idea. It's going to change the world. Okay. Oh, yes, Nikki, let me put up. Oh, and then, oh no, it's the same time as Ho'ikaika. Well, maybe you all can I'm sorry, Karen. And we set that, we've been working because we're working with the lawmakers because we want a bunch of lawmakers to be joining that. So we sort of defer to their schedule, and some of them are actively campaigning right now, right? Because with the Keiki caucus. So we kind of like, whatever time you guys can meet, we'll come and meet with you. It's only the first meeting, I would say, right? That on the 12th is the first meeting to sort of open the conversation. And then we'll be refining that children's policy agenda and the Keiki caucus agenda up. You know, usually we don't really finalize it until end of the year, right? So we have a couple months of conversations. Not your only opportunity if you have a great idea. And the HCAN Speaks link. Yeah, totally. Let me see if I can put it up. Other questions?
I just had a question about the PLTI. I love the whole program and the concept of it, but I think that we've seen just the barrier to participating is the frequency, and then the timing and the duration with people having conflict for childcare, and it's right around dinner time. So how have you seen that be addressed and be successful for the participants?
Melly still on. Melly, do you want to answer it?
Sure. Yeah. So when we do meet in person, we provide childcare for the parent leaders. So we're really open to them bringing their keiki. And of course, it's a parent leadership initiative. So, I mean, if we do have a separate childcare room, but we're really open to having them come back and forth and just be comfortable in having keiki in our space. And then we also provide dinner for the evening sessions, just to try to make it easier for families to be able to attend. We're just trying our best to kind of accommodate family schedules and kind of meet their needs so that they can still attend. And then for our Maui one, we are looking at making it hybrid, because we know we have families normally we meet in Kahului, but we have families in Makawao, Kula, or Lahaina who want to join. So we're looking at making it a hybrid version where some will be in person so they can meet and do the socialization and connection. And we also have that online too, but and then some will be virtual so that they can kind of juggle all the things they need to, but still participate.
Thank you. Yeah, because I think that something that we were kind of throwing around was the idea of like, I mean, obviously, well, my whole staff here at my farm is basically parents as well, but, from like an organizational standpoint, so much of the content seems useful. And lots of times, we like to be familiar with the programs that we're referring the clients into. So also wanted to see like, is there an opportunity to kind of just join certain sessions as a provider, but not be committed to the whole like cohort sequence?
Well, the way that the initiative is set up, it's really is a closed group. We talk about some pretty deep issues, when it comes to racism and inequalities. And so we work really hard to form those connections and form a trusting space within that core group. So we often don't allow people just to kind of pop in unless they're a guest speaker just for like that short period of time.
We do have what we call the taste of PLTI canvas. Right. That might be great, which is more like a 1 hour, or sometimes we've done like a little 2 hour, like more like a workshop with some of the elements of it, and then like more of an overview. So that might be, because I agree, right? People want to know, and I think we could also share like what's in the curriculum. Like I don't think none of that is a secret, right? So we could.
Yes, I'd be happy to do something like that if you guys want, just for your organization or your staff. If you want a little short, like taste of PLTI and some just more in depth about what it is and kind of some experiential, like what we kind of go through and some activities, I'd be happy to do that. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that would be great. And I do remember seeing the flyers with the IMUA team and everyone that was part of the last Taste of PLTI, and regretting that we couldn't make it. But yeah, I guess I can reach out to you separately, Mele, to see if we could schedule that.
Yes, I'll put my email in the chat.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I'll also do another pitch. I didn't put a slide in, but I'm thinking about it now. We're actually two things just to put on your radars in your kind of provider or parent hat. One is that we are currently working with Manoa and Department of Health and some other partners on a family survey to try to hear more family voices about like what is broken in the system and policy things they want. That is, I don't know. I'm hoping we're gonna have that survey ready to roll in October. It's going to be statewide, right? But again, I think we're trying to drive more of this work by what families need and want, not smart professionals in a room. So would love any and all of your help. Mele is actually coordinating that. Would love any and all of your help when we're ready to go. We're still working on the details in getting that survey out. We're hoping to get it to as many diverse families. We're just talking yesterday about having the survey in some other languages, not just English, right? So any help you can provide of trying to get, and we're going to have a gift card for families who take it, right? So to try to, but again, just to get more of the voice, even because not everyone's going to come to the Capitol, right? So knowing that, but elevating voices, even if people are just saying like, this is what my family needs and wants. And we are also forming up a, what are we calling it, Mele? Family Leadership Council. So not in people's professional hats. We have all those coalitions I told you about earlier, but really trying to build some of the folks I think involved in it will be our PLTI alumni, but other parents as well. Like again, building more of that sort of, I'm gonna say army, but it sounds violent. I need better, like building up that parent power to drive the work. So again, if you are interested in your parent hat in working on like in a parent kind of advocacy group, if you know people that you're like, this person would be perfect, I think that group is probably initially going to look at issues impacting prenatal to early childhood 3-5 is kind of the vibe of some folks we have now, but could grow where we might have like different groups that are working on different parent pieces. If you're interested, I would say email. You can email me. You can email Melee. It doesn't exist yet. We're like birthing it. This group. There probably will be swag. We're talking about if we'll have like a cool T-shirt or so you can join it and get cool swag. But the swag doesn't exist yet either because the group doesn't exist. So I'm telling you this now, like you can help us form it up, right? Other questions? We have like what, like 2 minutes? All right, we've got our contact. I think, Vanessa, are you going to share the slides? That had been my intention. Will the slides go out to folks after?
Yes, I think you would just have to, I'm not sure if you can upload it on the Sched.
Yeah, I will.
But yeah, okay.
Great. And then you'll have links and emails and all of that. So awesome. Thank you. Get involved in some way. That's what I just sort of encourage. Like, I'm always amazed. People can make a difference and make change. So just get involved.